So last week I shared a little bit about a couple of articles I read that were about Marianne Williamson and her beliefs. Some critical articles about her beliefs around certain things. And I invited us into an exploration of those ideas, that it's all about us, and that somehow that we are responsible for everything, and that some idea that that's the way that some people see New Thought. Some people see us as New Thought, and sometimes they kind of confuse New Thought and New Age, and they talk about that in that way and how that's getting out into the media and into the public. And so I was a little concerned about that, but also just open to, is there some truth in it? So after service last week, I had an opportunity to talk with a young man who was very eager to learn more about unity and what we believe in New Thought and in general, and he asked me about evil. And he said, well, New Thought says there is no evil. So how can you possibly say there is no such thing as evil? It doesn't make any sense. He's from a Catholic background, and so there's obviously a power for good and a power for evil. And that's just the way it is. So how can people in New Thought put on their rose-colored glasses and say there is no evil? Can't we just see? Are we blind? Are we blind, or are we stupid? We have evidence of evil in the world. Mass shootings, human trafficking, war, genocide. Have all of these things that we could call evil. How can we say there is no evil? And so I responded as openly as I could, and told him that I would have an opportunity. I would love to have an opportunity to sit down and talk about it. But I also understand that he's not alone in that. That sometimes we have these ideas that, well, there is no evil, so I'm just going to deny the existence of it, and I'm not. That's all I'm going to do. So I took some time this week to do some research, to do some reading. What do our New Thought teachers and founders say about evil? So I read what Mr. Charles and Earl Fillmore, co-founders of Unity, talk about evil, and there's some differences there a little bit. I read what Eric Butterworth says about evil. I read what Emily Cady in Lessons in Truth. If you're not familiar with that book, it is the very first book that Unity published, that they commissioned Dr. Cady to write for Unity. So what does she say about evil? So I took all of that, and I wrote about that in my blog, about evil, and I thought, okay, I've got it down, people. I have the quintessential idea about evil. But it didn't feel right. It didn't feel complete to me. When I sat down to think about how I wanted to address that today, I sat down with that, and it just didn't feel complete. So I went into more prayer and meditation and asking. And I know I talk about not praying to an external God, or we talk about that in Unity. God is not out there somewhere, but I will tell you, I was like, come on! Get it to me! I want to know about evil. What is that really about? Because I can't say there's no evil when I see what's going on in the world. So it came to me is this: the problem with evil is the word itself. The problem with evil is the word evil. Because evil, the word evil, when I use that word, creates in my mind duality. There's good and there's evil. When I say that something or someone is evil, I am in judgment. And I'm separating myself from that person or that situation by naming it evil. Notice what happens in your own body when you think of evil. What happens in your mind? What happens in your emotions? I mean, when you think of something that is evil, when you name something evil, what happens in your body? Just notice. And so, the problem with evil is evil, that we call things evil. So what came to me about that is, let's reframe that a little bit. What if, when we notice the appearance of the things that we might want to label as evil, that instead of labeling it evil, how about if we ask, where is love not showing up? Where is love not being experienced? Where is love not being expressed? Where is love in this situation? And even more than that, how can I be love in this situation? And as I thought about that, I realized that the word love can be a sometimes nebulous word. We use that word a lot. So what does that mean in that particular situation? Well, what came to me is that where they have the monkeys that hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So if we're going to see no evil and hear no evil and speak no evil, what are we going to do? Love. How does love see? How does love hear? How does love speak? I believe love sees. Love sees the unity of all. Love sees that we are one. Love sees the sacredness and the divinity of all people. Love sees the sacredness and the divinity of all creation. Love sees the divinity and the sacredness of animal life and the plants and the air and the earth itself. Love sees that I am one with all life. Love hears the cries for love. Love chooses to hear when someone is in pain. Love chooses to hear the cries for love that are expressed through violence. Love chooses to hear the cries for understanding and compassion and empathy that are expressed when people act in ways that are harmful to themselves or others or to the environment or to the earth. And love speaks words of empathy and compassion and encouragement and inspiration and empowerment, not words of judgment and condemnation. So love sees clearly God in everything. Love hears the call of a world seeking love. And love speaks that truth. And love acts from that truth. We take action in that space. So I want to illustrate how that may show up for us in our New Thought teaching. I was inspired recently I love, again, I love how the universe shows up when we ask and we seek and we find. And this book was, I had lunch actually a couple of weeks ago with Kath Robinson, and she was telling me she was studying, taking a class at Mile High on this book called The Gift of Love. There's sermons by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I ordered the book, and it came, I think, this past Monday, so no coincidences there. And I read this sermon. If you haven't read or listened to Dr. King's sermons, I highly recommend it. He is such an eloquent, educated man. He speaks and he writes in such beautiful ways, inspired by him. And he is responding in this sermon to the idea of evil. Surprise, surprise! Of course, he was obviously a leader in the civil rights movement. And one of the most prominent evils that he spoke to quite often, a couple, he spoke against the war in Vietnam. He also spoke out about the evil of racism in this country. So in this talk, he's talking about evil and how we as human beings have for centuries battled with this idea of evil. How do we get rid of evil? The evil that we do to each other. And he says that even through that humankind has been called to something higher. That we're called to something higher, even though we recognize evil. This is the way he puts it. Man's hankering after the demonic is always disturbed by his longing for the divine. Now, I'm using his language, and I'm going to reinterpret it a little bit in a minute. But I think it's important to recognize what he's talking about. And then he says that there are two ways that we normally try to eradicate evil. One is through the idea that we can do it. The idea that we can educate ourselves enough to do it. The idea that we can develop scientific understanding so much that we will do it. That we can legislate it. Somehow that we can eliminate evil through our own actions. Human actions. And he says this: man has subpoenaed nature to appear before the judgment seat of scientific investigation. None doubt that man's work in the scientific laboratories has brought unbelievable advances in power and comfort, producing machines that think and gadgets that soar majestically through the skies, stand impressively on the land, and move with stately dignity on the seas. But in spite of these astounding new scientific developments, the old evils continue, and the age of reason has transformed into an age of terror. Selfishness and hatred have not vanished with an enlargement of our educational system and an extension of our legislative policies. Man, by his own power, can never cast evil from the world. With the exalted Renaissance optimism, attempting to free the mind of man, forgot about man's capacity for sin, as he puts it. Now, don't cringe when you hear these words. Or you might, but I'm going to reframe them a little bit to you. And then he also says that the other way that we have tried to eradicate evil is through praying to God to do it for us. That somehow God is going to reach down God's hand and just wipe away all of the evil from the world. And that humans sometimes say, well, when it's God's will, in God's time, it will happen. And what he says about that is several things, but the thing that really stuck out for me is the belief that God will do everything for man is as untenable as the belief that man can do everything for himself. It too is based on a lack of faith. We must learn to expect God. We must learn that to expect God to do everything while we do nothing is not faith, but superstition. I love that line. We must learn that to expect God to do everything is not faith, it's superstition. And what he goes on to say is that neither man nor God can do it alone. That mankind, humankind, must open our hearts to the inflow of the divine and to act from that place of love. So I thought about that, and again, it comes from a very traditional Christian perspective. How would we say that? Omitting the idea of the word evil from the perspective of where is love not showing up? Where is love not being felt or expressed in this situation or for this person? And what we believe and we teach in New Thought, in Unity, is that we are not born in original sin, but that we are born in original blessing. That we are expressions of that divine love living in these bodies. And that is our true nature. And it is that nature of divine love that is always calling us up higher. To remember ourselves as that, to see through the eyes of love, to hear with the ears of love, and to speak with the tongue of love, and to act from love. Yet, we all come into this life experience and we experience the conditioning of the world around us. And we begin to identify not as pure, loving presence, pure, loving beings, but we begin to identify as male or female, or straight or gay, or Christian or Jew, or American or Mexican, or white or black. And we begin to identify with the conditioning. And so we believe that we're separate. And that belief in separation is what we in Unity think of as sin. It's a thought. It's a belief. That we're separate from the divine, separate from love, thereby separate from each other, by whatever name we call ourselves. And what happens through fear? We don't experience love. And so we become conditioned. Yet there is that is always calling us to something higher, something better, something more in alignment with love. And sometimes in New Thought, it's not as though we think we can do it personally, but we do teach sometimes that, if we just, and please don't hear me say that I deny this is true, at the foundation, if we just pray, if we just think the right thoughts, if we just deny the existence of evil, if we just put on our rose-colored glasses, that everything will go away. Well, it's not going to go away that way. We send our prayers and we send our thoughts to those who experience the effects of the absence of love, and that's good. That's good. It's important to radiate love out into the world. I'm not discounting that. But in some ways, in my way of thinking, that is tantamount to thinking that God is going to do it. What I believe Dr. King was telling us and supporting us in is something that I think is important for us to take to heart. Our spiritual practices are beautiful and perfect and right and powerful. that we connect and we pray and we align and we attune and we open our hearts to love, to knowing who we are and to being expressions of that love. And we shine that light out into the world through our thoughts, through our meditations, all of the things that transform human consciousness. I do believe that. And I do believe that it also asks of us to do what is ours to do. I don't know what that is all the time. Sometimes I look at the world around us and I think, I feel helpless because I don't know what to do. Especially on this global scale. But what I think we can do, and I think what we're called to do, wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves in our sphere of influence, whether that's in our relationships with our family, whether that's in our jobs, or it's in our spiritual community, wherever we are, we have the opportunity to be love in that situation. When it's so tempting for us to get caught up in the fear. Really? How would it be for you to be in a group of people who are watching the news and blaming and criticizing and calling it evil? How would it be for you to stand in the midst of that, connect with that divine essence of love, and speak the word of truth into that energy? To choose to say, I am choosing to see the truth of love. I am choosing to hear the call and the cry for love for those who are experiencing the fear, and those who are acting from that fear, and those who are being affected by the actions of the one who is not experiencing love or giving love or sharing love. How would it be for me to stand in that love and to be that love in that setting? I believe that's what we can do. Every moment of every day. To call each other up to love. To remind each other that we are here as love expressing, and love is the only power that is ever going to transform what we might perceive as evil. And it is through our daily thoughts and words and actions that love is shared with the world. And so again, I invite us to reconsider the word evil. Rather than naming and separating and thinking in dualistic terms, we remember that love is the only truth. Love is the only reality. And when I witness something where love appears not to be present, how can I choose to see and hear and speak love into that situation? So, again, it's not about denying, but it's about reframing and coming from a different perspective.